She sat at the edge of the table, her hands clasped so tightly that her knuckles had turned pale. The room buzzed with muted conversations, maps spread wide, voices rising and falling in clipped military tones. But no one looked at her. Not once. Why were they ignoring her? Her presence was official, her credentials undeniable. She had trained, bled, sacrificed more than most of the men in this room. And yet she felt invisible, like the storm inside her chest hadn't earned the right to thunder here. Her name was Captain Alina Ward, 34 years old, combat pilot, sharpshooter, ground operative. But titles meant little when silence pressed this heavy. Someone at the far end cleared his throat, running through numbers, supply routes, possible entry points. She only half listened. Her eyes drifted to the map. The red circles, the shaded lines, the target marked in black. It looked simple when sketched out, but no plan ever survived the first shot fired. A younger soldier leaned against the wall, laughing under his breath at something whispered to him. Alina caught the smirk. She didn't flinch. She had been laughed at before, dismissed before, and sometimes ignored was safer than being noticed. Because if they knew what she carried inside, if they knew what she had hidden even from herself, they wouldn't want her here at all. The briefing ended with the scrape of chairs, boots against concrete, orders clipped, papers folded. She stood last, waiting for the room to empty. Her commanding officer glanced at her once, quick, sharp, but said nothing. That silence weighed heavier than words. Outside, the night air was cooler. Diesel fumes, cigarette smoke, the faint hum of generators. She walked alone through the compound, helmet tucked under her arm. Above, the stars looked close enough to touch, but distant enough to remind her of everything she'd lost. Her tent waited, bare, functional, a cot, a bag, a weapon clean to perfection. She sat at the edge of the bed and pressed her palms against her face. No one saw the way her breath shook, the way her chest heaved in silent battle. No one ever would. The storm stayed locked inside. Because if it broke free, she wasn't sure she could hold it back again. A knock broke the stillness. She froze. Few people came to her quarters without reason. Ward, a voice hesitant, young. She stood and opened the flap. A private, barely out of his 20s, shifted from foot to foot. His uniform was too crisp, his eyes too wide. "They said you'd know what to do with this," he stammered, holding out a folded slip of paper. She took it, nodded once, closed the flap again. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened the note. Coordinates. Different from the ones on the map earlier. Why? She stared at them, her pulse quickening. These weren't part of the official mission. She knew this terrain. Remote, treacherous, scarred by a history no briefing ever covered. Her throat tightened. She folded the note slowly, as if closing it might close the question burning in her mind. But it didn't. It couldn't. Because she remembered something. No, someone tied to that place. Someone the rest of the world believed gone. Someone she had buried in silence years ago. She sat back down, gripping the note like it might vanish. The storm inside her chest began to roar. But she said nothing. Not yet. Hours later, the compound shifted into restless sleep. Boots stilled, engines cooled, lights dimmed one by one. She lay awake, eyes tracing the dark canvas overhead. Memories slipped in like intruders. A boy's laughter, the sound of rain on corrugated metal, a promise whispered too softly. And then gunfire, smoke, a silence that never left her. She closed her eyes, squeezing them tight, but the images stayed. They always did. Morning came harsh, the kind of dawn that bleeds gray before it gives you light. She dressed with mechanical precision, boots laced, dog tags hidden beneath her collar. Her reflection in the cracked mirror looked calm. But calm was only the eye of her storm. On the airstrip, the whine of engines cut the silence. Helicopters thudded overhead, their blades tearing through sky. The unit gathered. She joined them, expression unreadable, heart steadying itself against the rhythm of the mission. Brief words exchanged, weapons checked, last-minute prayers whispered under breath. And then movement. She boarded with the rest, but inside she carried something none of them knew. A secret folded in paper. A storm no silence could contain forever. The helicopter lifted, dust swirled, the world below shrank. She stared at the horizon, her jaw tight, her grip firm. What they didn't know was this. Her mission wasn't theirs. Not anymore. Because the coordinates in her pocket weren't just numbers. They were a question that had haunted her for years. A question she was finally ready to face. But not yet. Not here. For now she sat still. Eyes forward. Storm waiting. The soldier beside her fidgeted nervously, glancing at her out of the corner of his eye. "You ever get used to this?" he asked. His voice cracked just slightly, betraying the fear he tried to bury. Alina turned her head, studied him. He couldn't have been more than 22. His helmet looked too big for his head. He reminded her of another young face, another soldier. Someone who hadn't come back. "No," she said softly. "You don't get used to it, you just learn to carry it." He swallowed hard, nodded, and didn't speak again. The helicopter roared on. Somewhere below, the world waited. Somewhere hidden, the past waited too. And inside her, the storm gathered strength. The helicopter pitched slightly, its frame rattling with every gust. The air was dry, sharp, carrying the smell of oil and iron. Alina sat still, her hands resting over the straps of her vest, her eyes fixed on the endless horizon. But inside, her thoughts weren't still. They pressed against her ribs like waves against a shore, unrelenting. The note. The coordinates. That single fold of paper felt heavier than all the gear strapped to her body. She shifted her gaze briefly, scanning the men around her. Young faces, weathered faces, eyes holding both fear and steel. Each one carried something unseen. A letter back home, a regret, a prayer tucked into silence. The one who had spoken earlier, the kid, sat across from her. His helmet shadowed his eyes, but his hands twitched nervously against his rifle. She wanted to tell him something more, something honest, but the words stayed locked inside. The pilot's voice cut through the static, 10 minutes out. Her heart gave a single hard beat. Not from fear, not yet. From the pull of memory. Because she knew the terrain below. Not from maps. From footsteps. From nights long ago when her world was different, when she believed promises could outlast bullets. But promises had been broken. And the land had taken everything. The helicopter dropped lower, banking toward jagged hills. The engine strained, metal groaning. Dust spiraled below, brown and gold, swallowing the horizon. "Eyes sharp," someone muttered. "This is where things get quiet." Quiet. Alina almost smiled at the word. They thought silence was peace. But silence was where storms learned to breathe. She adjusted her headset, feeling the vibrations hum against her skull. Her pulse matched the rhythm of the blades. She inhaled, slow, steady. The calm before the drop. The ramp lowered with a grinding hiss. Heat slammed in, dry and bitter, tasting of iron and stone. Boots hit earth, sand crunched, orders were clipped, movements sharp. Alina stepped out last. Her eyes swept the horizon, scanning ridges and shadows, the angles where death might wait unseen. The world looked empty, but emptiness was never safe. The team moved forward, forming a staggered line. Dust clung to their boots, their faces. The sun carved sharp lines across their helmets. Alina's rifle rested against her chest, her finger brushing the trigger guard. They pushed into silence, a silence heavy enough to make every breath sound too loud. For miles, nothing stirred, only wind whispering across rocks, carrying the faint rattle of loose gravel. Then footsteps behind her, too quick. She turned. It was the kid again, adjusting his strap, falling into step beside her. His voice was low, barely more than breath. "They say you flew over this place once, years ago." Her chest tightened. How did he know that? She said nothing, just kept walking. But he persisted, glancing sideways at her. "My brother, he didn't come back from here." He swallowed hard, thought maybe you'd understand. The storm inside her chest shifted. She stopped just for a second, her eyes locked on his. And in that second she saw the truth behind his nerves, not just fear of today. Fear of carrying a name that might never be spoken again. Her throat ached, but she only said, "Keep moving, eyes open." It was all she allowed herself. Because if she said more, if she admitted what she carried too, the storm might break. They moved on. Hours stretched. The sun climbed higher, then bent west, casting long shadows over stone. The unit pushed through canyons, their voices low, their radios crackling with static. Every sound felt sharp, every silence sharper. And then, a single shot. The crack split the air, echoing off stone walls. Everyone dropped low, rifles snapping up, breaths caught in throats. Alina's pulse spiked, not from panic, from recognition. The sound had come from high ground, from a ridge near the coordinates in her pocket. Her breath stilled. Coincidence? Or connection? The commander's voice barked orders. "Contact left, eyes up, sweep it." The unit fanned out, rifles scanning, boots grinding gravel. Dust hung thick, refusing to settle. Alina's eyes darted across the ridge. For a heartbeat, she swore she saw movement. A figure. Just a flicker, there and gone. Her chest tightened, her hands shook. She told herself it was nothing, a shadow, a trick of light. But deep down she knew better. Because years ago, she had seen that same flicker disappear into the same ridge. The day everything was torn from her. Another shot rang out, closer this time. A bullet tore into stone, fragments scattering. The kid ducked, swearing under his breath. His eyes darted to her, wide, desperate. "What do we do?" Alina's voice came steady, sharper than the fear in her chest. "We don't give them silence, push forward." The commander gave her a quick glance, as if surprised she'd spoken. But he didn't argue. They moved fast, tight, cover to cover. The ridge loomed above, jagged and cruel, its edges carved by years of wind and blood. Alina's grip tightened on her rifle, her breath shallow now. Because every step closer pulled her deeper into the storm she'd locked away. And she knew. Someone up there carried the key to everything she'd buried. The gunfire stopped as suddenly as it started. The silence that followed was worse. It pressed against ears, against hearts. The commander signaled a halt, sweat dripped down brows, eyes scanned, fingers twitched. No one moved. Alina did. Slow, controlled. Her boots crunched softly as she stepped forward, eyes locked on the ridge. She felt it. The storm rising. The truth circling closer. But she didn't say a word. Not yet. Because some storms aren't meant to be spoken. They're meant to break. When the world is ready to hear them. The ridge stared back at them like a jagged scar against the sky. Silent now, too silent. Every soldier knew what that meant. Danger doesn't always shout. Sometimes it waits. The commander's hand went up, fist closed, halt. They crouched low, rifles aimed, eyes sweeping the ridge line. Dust stung their faces, the air dry enough to cut the throat. The younger soldier, the kid, breath too loud, chest heaving. Alina heard it even over the ringing silence. She glanced at him, sharp, and he froze like a child caught in the wrong place. His fear wasn't weakness, it was raw human, the kind you can't train out. Her gaze returned to the ridge. That flicker she thought she saw. It hadn't been a trick of the light. She knew this place too well. Years ago, this same canyon had swallowed her world whole. It was where she had lost him. But now, the coordinates in her pocket pointed her back here. Why? The commander whispered into the radio, but static bit back. The signal was useless. Cut off. The men shifted, uneasy. Fingers drummed against rifle grips. Some muttered prayers into the dust. Alina closed her eyes briefly, let the storm in her chest roll once, then forced it quiet. When she opened them again, her voice carried steady, almost calm. They're waiting. They want us to climb blind. The commander shot her a look, half irritation, half suspicion. And what do you suggest, Captain? Captain. The word tasted cold. He rarely used it for her. Don't give them high ground. Pull back, flank from the west. His jaw tightened. He didn't like being told, but hesitation lingered just long enough for the kid to blurt out, voice cracking. She's right, that's what they did too. He stopped, swallowed the rest. Alina's head turned slowly toward him. What had he almost said? The commander scowled, but the kid's outburst hung heavy. The others looked between them, uncertainty thick in their faces. Alina felt it again, an echo. The same desperate insistence she'd heard years ago, on this same soil, just before everything went wrong. Her chest constricted. Not now. Not here. The commander finally spat the order. West flank, move. They shifted formation, boots grinding against gravel. Sweat-stung eyes, rifles stayed up. Every step felt stretched thin, pulled tight with unseen threads. The ridge loomed above, watching. Always watching. Alina's boots crunched softer than the rest. Years of training had carved her silence into instinct, but tonight, silence was more than skill. It was shield. Because the storm inside her threatened to spill into every sound. The path wound narrow stone walls pressing close. The sun bent low now, painting jagged shadows across their faces. Every corner felt like a question. Every silence a threat. The soldier ahead of her muttered, voice low, as though speaking might keep fear away. You believe in luck, Captain. She almost laughed, almost. Luck runs out, preparation doesn't. He gave a humorless smile. Guess we'll see which one's left. The words trailed into the canyon. Then, a sharp whistle cut the air. Instinct training. Everyone dropped. The blast tore through rock above, shattering stone, raining fragments down. Dust-choked lungs, ears rang. Shouts rose, muffled by the ringing. Ambush. Gunfire ripped from the ridge, tearing the silence apart. Bullets chewed stone, sparked metal, snapped the air too close. Alina pressed against cover, eyes narrowing. Her pulse slammed, not panic, precision. The storm inside wasn't chaos, it was focus now. She leaned out, sighted her rifle. One breath. One squeeze. The shot cracked back. A shadow fell from the ridge, tumbling into dust. Another moved, another breath, another shot. Her hands stayed steady, her eyes sharp, though her chest burned with every heartbeat. The kid beside her froze, his rifle trembling. Bullets sparked inches from his head. He couldn't move, couldn't breathe. His eyes locked on hers, pleading without words. She slid closer, her voice cutting through the gunfire, sharp and unshakable. Focus, one target, just one. His hands shook harder. I can't. You can now. Her voice wasn't just command, it was anchor. The kind she'd once needed herself when another voice had steadied her in this same canyon. The kid swallowed, lifted his rifle, shut one eye. His breath hitched, then steadied. He fired. A figure dropped from the ridge. His chest heaved, shock in his eyes. He'd pulled the trigger and someone was gone. Not glory, not triumph, just weight. Alina saw it hit him, saw it carve into his face. She wanted to tell him something, anything, to take that weight. But nothing takes it. You just carry it. The gunfire slowed, fading into distance. Shadows slipped back into the ridge, retreating. The commander barked orders again, his voice hoarse from dust. Check perimeter, watch the ridge. Alina didn't move at first. Her eyes stayed locked upward, searching the jagged edge where shadows had fled. Her chest tightened, not from exertion, from recognition. Because she swore she'd seen a figure pause before vanishing. And in that pause, a silhouette she knew. Couldn't know. Didn't dare believe. Her throat went dry, her stomach dropped. It couldn't be. Not after all this time. But the storm inside her chest roared, because if it was true, if that silhouette belonged to who she thought, then the coordinates weren't a trap. They were a message. She pressed her back against the stone, her rifle steady, her breath uneven. The others moved around her, shouting, securing ground. Dust still hung, thick and choking. She closed her eyes briefly. Her storm whispered a name she hadn't spoken in years. But she didn't say it out loud. Not yet. Because names have power. And if this one still lived, then everything she'd built to survive might come crashing down. The commander moved past, glaring. You see something. Her eyes snapped open, calm mask back in place. Nothing, just dust. He studied her for a second too long. Suspicion etched his face. But then he turned away. She exhaled slow, controlled. Her chest still burned, her heart still thrashed. But her voice stayed silent. Because storms don't reveal themselves in the middle of battle. They wait. They gather. They break only when they must. Night crept in slowly, stretching shadows across the canyon floor. The ridge loomed black against a blood-orange sky. The unit huddled in silence, scanning the horizon, waiting for another strike that didn't come. Alina sat apart, rifle across her knees, eyes on the jagged dark line above. The coordinates in her pocket felt heavier than ever. Because she knew now. They weren't coincidence. They were personal. Someone wanted her here. And she needed to know why. But she also knew the cost. Storms don't break without leaving wreckage. And she wasn't sure how much more wreckage she could survive. Night swallowed the canyon whole. The air cooled, but the silence burned hotter than the sun ever could. They huddled close to stone, radios crackling with static, eyes scanning shadows that refused to stay still. Every ridge, every crevice looked alive in the moonlight. Alina sat apart, her rifle resting across her lap, her eyes fixed on the black line of horizon. The storm inside her pressed harder now, each breath edged with something she couldn't shake. She had seen him. She wasn't imagining it. The silhouette, the pause, the way the figure had lingered just long enough for her to feel the old scar in her chest tear wider. But how could it be him? He was gone. He had been gone for years. She pressed her palms against her knees, forcing herself still. The storm raged, but her face stayed calm. To the others, she looked like stone. But inside, she was breaking. The commander stalked past, muttering orders under his breath. He shot her another look, suspicion etched across the lines of his face. He didn't trust her, he never had. But trust wasn't what she came here for. The kid sat close, his back against the canyon wall. His eyes were wide, staring at his hands like they didn't belong to him anymore. The shot he'd fired still lived there. She knew the weight well. It never leaves you. It just shifts shape. He caught her looking and asked, voice raw. Does it ever stop? Her throat tightened. She wanted to tell him the truth, that no, it doesn't, that the faces stay, the sound of the shot stays, the silence afterward stays. But his eyes searched hers for hope, not truth. So she gave him the only answer she could. You learn to carry it differently. His jaw trembled, his eyes dropping. He didn't press, but she saw the storm starting in him too, the one all soldiers carry when they cross that line for the first time. The night stretched. The wind shifted, carrying faint sounds that didn't belong, metal clinking, gravel crunching, movement above. The ridge wasn't empty. The commander signaled quietly, hands up, fists closed, wait. But waiting made silence heavier. Alina's eyes locked on the ridge. Shadows moved again, too deliberate to be the wind. Her breath slowed, her body coiled. She wanted to tell them, wanted to speak the name she'd carried in silence. But what if she was wrong? What if the storm inside her was just memory twisting the night? A sharp crack split the dark. A flare shot high, spilling red light across the canyon. Figures appeared on the ridge, rifles up, silhouetted against crimson glow. Gunfire poured down like rain. Chaos tore through the unit. Bullets sparked against stone, ricochet screaming past ears. Shouts, orders, curses. Alina dropped low, her rifle snapping up. She fired into the ridge, her shots deliberate, measured. The storm sharpened into focus with every squeeze of the trigger. But between the muzzle flashes, she saw him again. This time clear. The shape of his shoulders, the way he moved. It couldn't be mistake. Her chest constricted so hard it hurt to breathe. Because if it was him, then everything she believed, everything she'd mourned was a lie. A bullet chipped stone inches from her head. She snapped back to cover, gasping. The kid pressed close beside her, panic rising. They've got us pinned, what do we? She grabbed his shoulder, steady and firm. Breathe, count, don't rush it. He swallowed, tried to match her calm, even as bullets rained. His rifle shook less this time. He was learning. The commander crawled past, shouting over the gunfire. Ward, cover the west ridge, now. Her eyes darted upward again, back to that silhouette. The storm inside her screamed, begged her to break orders, to go where the coordinates had led her, to chase the ghost she'd seen. But she forced herself still. Duty first, storm later. She leaned out, firing west, driving shadows back from the ridgeline. The air reeked of cordite, of dust and sweat. Her ears rang, but her shots stayed true. Minutes stretched into eternity. Then, as suddenly as it began, the gunfire stopped. The ridge fell silent again. Smoke drifted through the canyon, glowing faint in dying flare light. The commander cursed, spitting into the dirt. They're testing us, pushing us. Alina didn't answer. Her eyes stayed on the ridge, her chest heaving. Because he had been there. She knew it. When the others began regrouping, checking gear, catching breath, she slipped away just far enough to unfold the note again. The coordinates stared back at her, mocking, undeniable. Her hands shook as she refolded it, tucking it into her vest. Her storm wouldn't let her sleep tonight. Hours bled into uneasy silence. The unit huddled into rotations, some resting against stone, others watching the horizon. The kid sat near her, silent now, his rifle across his knees. Finally he spoke, voice barely more than whisper. You knew someone here, didn't you? Her chest tightened. She didn't answer. But he watched her, eyes sharp despite his youth. You looked at the ridge different, like you were waiting for someone. She turned her head, met his gaze. His honesty cut deep, sharper than any bullet. She almost told him, almost let the storm break free. Instead, she said, get some rest. His eyes lingered, but he obeyed, laying back against his pack, staring at the stars like they might offer answers. Alina stayed awake, watching, waiting, listening. And when the wind shifted again, she swore she heard it. A whistle. Low, familiar. Her breath caught. Because years ago, in another life, before the storm had claimed her, that whistle had meant safety. It had meant him. Now it meant something else. A message. A warning. Or both. Her chest ached, her eyes burned, but she stayed still, silent. Because if she moved now, if she followed the sound, the storm might tear everything apart. But she knew this much. The ridge hadn't finished with her. Not yet. And neither had he. Dawn came slow, reluctant. The sky bled pale gray, the kind of light that hides more than it reveals. The unit stirred, weary eyes blinking grit from lashes, muscles stiff from a night against stone. Radios hissed faint static, still useless. They packed in silence, the weight of the night ambush still hanging heavy. Alina checked her rifle, chambered a round, tightened her straps. Her movements looked mechanical, but her mind was. It was fixed on the ridge. She couldn't shake it. The silhouette, the whistle, the impossible pull of the coordinates in her pocket. The storm inside her churned restless, pressing against ribs, begging to be let loose. The commander barked orders, his voice gravel. We move north, higher ground, they won't surprise us twice. His eyes lingered on Alina a second longer than the others. Suspicion, distrust. He'd seen her glances last night. He knew she was carrying something she wasn't sharing. But he didn't ask, not yet. The column moved out, boots crunching in rhythm, rifles angled sharp. The canyon narrowed, walls pressing close, sky slicing thin above. Every echo sounded too loud, every shadow looked alive. Alina walked near the rear, her gaze darting not forward, but sideways, upward, always toward the ridge. The coordinates burned in her chest. She slipped her hand into her vest briefly, feeling the paper's edge. A decision waited there. Not now, but soon. The kid dropped back beside her, his face pale, lips cracked from dry air. He carried himself heavier than yesterday, shoulders hunched. The weight of his first kill hadn't lifted. It never does. You didn't sleep, he said softly. Alina kept her eyes forward. Neither did you. He gave a hollow smile. Guess none of us did. Then, quieter, you looked like you were listening to something. Her jaw tightened. He'd noticed more than she wanted. She didn't answer, silence stretched. Finally, she said, sometimes silence carries more than noise. He frowned at that but didn't press. They moved on. Hours blurred, sun climbing higher, heat pressing down. Sweat cut trails through dust on their faces. Lips cracked. Boots scuffed against loose stone. The canyon opened wider, the ridge stretching like a jagged scar across the horizon. The commander signaled halt. They fanned out, forming perimeter. Maps unfolded, water sipped sparingly, breath caught. Alina crouched near the edge of the group, her eyes locked on the ridge line again. It wasn't just memory now. It was pull. Magnetic, unrelenting. Her storm thrashed. Duty told her to stay, orders bound her here. But something deeper screamed louder, something older than the uniform she wore. The kid noticed her stillness. His voice was a whisper, careful. You're going up there, aren't you? Her head snapped toward him, eyes sharp. No. But he saw through it, his jaw clenched. If you do, don't go alone. Her chest ached, not from the storm, but from the way his words carried something she recognized. Fear dressed as loyalty. The same kind she once gave, to someone she thought she'd lost. The commander folded the map, snapping the unit back into motion. Move out. But Alina didn't. Her boots stayed planted, her breath caught. Because on the ridge, movement, faint, small, but deliberate. Her heart slammed once, twice. She rose slowly, her rifle low, eyes fixed upward. The storm roared, louder than orders, louder than reason. The kid whispered behind her, "Don't." But she moved. She broke formation, stepped away from the unit, away from the mission. One step, another. Boots crunching against gravel, louder in her ears than the world's gunfire. The commander's voice snapped sharp, "Ward, back in line." She didn't stop. Every step closer pulled her deeper. The ridge loomed higher, the air thinner. The coordinates in her pocket burned hotter with each breath. She felt them leading her, not north, not west, not where orders pointed. But here. Shouts rose behind her, the commander's curse, the unit's confusion. Boots shifted, arguments clashed. But she didn't turn back. The kid's voice cut through it all, desperate. "Captain, please." Her chest twisted. She wanted to tell him why. Wanted to explain the storm, the silhouette, the impossible truth pulling her apart. But she couldn't, not yet. Instead, she said only, "Stay with them." And then she climbed. The stone tore at her palms, gravel sliding under boots. The ridge cut sharp against sky, each step heavier than the last. Breath burned, muscles strained. But she didn't stop. Because with every step, the storm inside her didn't just roar. It whispered. A voice she hadn't heard in years. Calling her name. Alina. Her throat tightened, eyes burning. She pressed harder, faster, clawing her way up jagged stone. Her heart wasn't steady now, it was breaking. At the top, the wind hit sharp, snapping hair against her face. The ridge stretched wide, stone carved by years of silence. Empty. She froze, chest heaving. Her rifle shook in her grip. Nothing. Her storm faltered, doubt clawed at her ribs. Had she imagined it? Had grief twisted into ghosts? Then, a whistle. Soft, low. Behind her. She spun, rifle raised. And froze. A figure stood at the edge of the ridge. Silhouette framed by sky, broad shoulders, scar across his jaw. Eyes she once knew better than her own. Her chest collapsed inward, breath torn away. It was him. Alive. For a moment the world stopped. The wind hushed, the canyon stilled, her storm broke open into silence. She lowered her rifle slowly, her hands trembling. His name slipped from her lips like a wound reopened. And the sound of it was both salvation and ruin. How do you breathe when the dead stand before you? Alina's chest strained, each inhale sharp, shallow. Her boots felt nailed to the stone, as if the earth itself demanded she stay rooted in disbelief. He didn't move at first, neither did she. The wind carried between them, dry and sharp, tugging dust into the air like smoke from an unseen fire. Her storm should have screamed, but it didn't. It hushed, as if waiting. His face was older, rougher, lines etched deeper than she remembered. A scar cut across his jaw, one she had never seen before. His eyes, though. Those hadn't changed. Sharp, familiar, dangerous. He tilted his head, a gesture she knew, casual, disarming. It had once made her laugh long ago in a world before uniforms and missions. Now it cut like glass. "You shouldn't be here," he said finally, his voice low, carrying just enough to reach her over the wind. Her rifle hung slack at her side, her grip trembling. "You're supposed to be dead." The words sounded broken, smaller than she intended. He half smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Supposed to be. The storm flared again, crashing against her ribs, forcing questions into her throat. They all tangled together. How? Why? Where have you been? Why didn't you come back? But only one made it out. Why? He looked away, scanning the canyon below as if he were checking patterns of shadow and movement. Old habits. His soldier's instincts hadn't died with his name. "You wouldn't understand." Her jaw tightened. "Try me." A silence stretched, the kind that hurt. He shifted his weight, and for a moment his shoulders sagged like he carried more than she could imagine. Then he said, quietly, "They left me, buried me in lies. If I'd gone back, you'd all be dead now." Her breath caught, a truth, a manipulation she couldn't tell. "Alina," he said, softer now, almost human, "I survived, but I couldn't go back, not after what I saw, not after what I became." Her grip on the rifle tightened again, metal biting against her palm. "And what are you now?" The question cut deeper than either of them expected. His eyes met hers, and for the first time since he appeared they flickered, just slightly, with something raw. "Not yours." Her chest cracked, just enough for the storm to pour through. The canyon below shifted with sound, the faint clatter of rocks, distant voices. The unit, her unit. They hadn't given up on her trail, they were climbing, chasing. She glanced over her shoulder, then back to him. The impossible man who should have been a grave. "You don't know what you're doing being here," he said, sharper now, urgent. "They'll see me, and if they do, your mission over, you're over." Her stomach nodded, the mission. The objective, the orders, the reason she was here at all. It all pulled at her with chains. But so did he. "What are you part of?" she demanded. His silence was her answer. The kid's voice drifted faint from below, calling her name. Her throat ached at the sound of it, young, terrified, loyal. He had followed despite her order. Her storm twisted violently, tearing her in two. Duty, loyalty, or the ghost alive before her. She lowered her rifle further, but her eyes never left his. "If you're not my enemy, then prove it." His gaze hardened. "And if I am?" Her voice trembled, but she forced it steady. "Then I'll do what I should have done years ago." The silence that followed wasn't wind, it was memory. Nights they had spent in muddy tents, whispering dreams of life after service. Promises that now burned like ash. He stepped closer, slow, deliberate. She didn't raise her weapon, not yet. "I didn't want you to see me like this," he said. "Not as what I've become, but maybe it's better. Maybe now you'll finally understand why storms like us don't get calm seas." Her chest tightened at his words. They cut like truth but dripped like poison. Below, a shout rose, the commander's voice sharp with fury. They were almost on the ridge. Time snapped taut. He looked at her once more, something flickering in his eyes she couldn't name. Regret, perhaps, or warning. Then he stepped back, fatting toward the jagged edge of the ridge where shadows swallowed him. "Don't follow me," he said, his voice rough, final. "Not unless you're ready to lose everything left of you." And then he was gone. Alina stood frozen, staring at the empty edge. Her chest heaved, her storm raging louder than the canyon wind. Boots scraped behind her. The kid emerged first, breathless, face flushed from the climb. Relief cracked his expression when he saw her, but then confusion spread. "You're alone," he said slowly. His eyes darted, searching the ridge. The commander followed, eyes like knives. He stepped close, jaw tight. "What the hell did you see up here?" Alina's lips parted. She could tell them, could unravel the lie, shatter the silence, speak the ghost back into existence. But the storm whispered, "Not yet." So she said nothing. The commander's nostrils flared. He grabbed her arm, his grip bruising. "You broke formation. You disobeyed. If you pull something like this again." The kid cut in, his voice sharp, surprising even himself. "She was covering our flanks, sir. We needed it." Alina's eyes flicked to him. He lied for her. The commander glared between them, suspicion carved deep in his features. But the noise of movement below forced his decision. He released her arm, shoving her back into line. "Fine," he snapped, "but next time I won't save you from yourself." Alina didn't respond, couldn't. Her storm was too loud. Her silence too heavy. As they regrouped, the kid brushed close. His whisper meant only for her. "You saw someone, didn't you?" Her throat burned, she didn't answer. But she didn't deny it either. They moved on, the ridge falling behind them. Yet every step Alina took was heavier. Because the ghost wasn't gone. He was alive. And she was carrying him now, inside her storm, in her silence, in every choice that lay ahead. The canyon stretched endless, each echo of boots against stone feeling heavier than the last. The unit moved like shadows now, slower, wearier. But for Alina, every step wasn't just distance, it was weight. Her storm hadn't calmed since the ridge. It pressed harder, gnawed sharper, filling every silence with his voice. Don't follow me, not unless you're ready to lose everything. But how could she not? The commander stayed close to her, always watching, his suspicion an unspoken leash. The kid lingered near her too, his loyalty a quieter chain. Between them she walked tightrope thin, balancing lies on her lips and truth in her chest. The sky burned pale with sun, but shadows pooled deeper in the canyon. Heat pressed like iron. Their mission hadn't changed, at least not on paper. Push north, locate the outpost, eliminate the cell before it reached villages further down. But for Alina, the mission was no longer ink and orders. It was flesh, eyes, a ghost breathing. And it scared her more than the enemy waiting ahead. When night came, they set camp beneath a fractured cliffside. Fires forbidden, they chewed rations cold. Radios still dead, voices hushed. Even silence seemed louder here. The commander called her aside, away from the others, his face half-lit by moonlight carved in suspicion. You're hiding something. Not a question, a verdict. Alina kept her face calm, but her stomach twisted. You broke formation, you went higher, and you came back shaken. What did you see? Her jaw tightened. Nothing that matters. His eyes narrowed. Everything matters out here. A beat stretched. Her storm urged her to speak, to spill everything, to say he's alive, to say the mission is compromised. But she couldn't, because if she said it out loud, it would stop being hers. It would become theirs. And she wasn't ready to share the storm. The commander's gaze pierced deeper. If you keep secrets from me, Captain, you endanger every soul here. Do you understand? Her voice came quiet. I understand. But he didn't look convinced. He stepped closer, his words rough, almost cruel. Don't forget, silence can kill more soldiers than bullets. Then he turned, leaving her in the half-light. She stood there long after he walked away, her chest heaving against the storm. Silence could kill. He was right. But silence also kept her alive. The kid found her later, crouching near the canyon's edge, staring into darkness. His face looked younger in moonlight, almost fragile. He sat without asking. For a while neither spoke. Then he whispered, I know you're protecting something. Alina turned slowly, her eyes narrowing. And what makes you so sure? He swallowed, gaze flicking down. Because I've done it too, protected something I shouldn't. Her storm shifted. For the first time she asked, what was it? The kid's throat worked. His voice cracked low. Back home, my brother, he joined them, the people we fight. I never told command, because if I did, they'd... His voice broke. He clenched his fists. He's blood. I couldn't hand him over. Alina's chest tightened. His secret bled into hers, tangled with it. She recognized the fracture in him, the same storm in smaller form. You're not alone, she said softly. The words slipped out before she could catch them. They weren't comfort, they were confession. The kid looked at her, searching her face, and whispered, then don't carry it alone. Her storm almost broke then, almost but not yet. The night dragged on. The unit rotated watch, shadows stretching long across stone. Alina barely closed her eyes. Every time she did, she saw him, on the ridge, fading into shadow, his voice in her chest. By dawn, her body ached with exhaustion, but her mind was fire. They moved again, climbing higher, the air thinner now. The canyon gave way to jagged plateaus, each ledge a knife edge of stone. And then, without warning, gunfire. It cracked sharp, splitting silence. Bullets slammed into stone, sparks scattering. The unit dove for cover, shouting. Rifles snapped back in answer. The enemy had found them. Alina pressed against rock, her rifle up, scanning. Shadows darted across ridges above. Echoes tangled, too many to count. They were outnumbered. The commander barked orders, his voice iron. Hold position, return fire. The canyon erupted, thunder of rifles, whine of ricochets, the scream of stone shattering. Alina's storm roared, not just from the fight. From him. Because among the figures on the ridge above. She saw him. For one fractured second, their eyes met through chaos. His rifle wasn't pointed at her. It never had been. But he was with them. The breath ripped from her chest. The storm collapsed into fire. Bullets slammed closer. The unit shouted for cover. The commander roared for flank. But Alina couldn't move. Her eyes were locked on him. He was enemy. Or ally. Or both. And he had chosen not to tell her which. The kid grabbed her arm, dragging her down as stone shattered above them. His voice was raw with fear. "Captain, what are you doing?" She blinked, tearing her eyes from the ridge. Her storm fought, twisted, screamed. Orders demanded fire. Her heart demanded answers. She raised her rifle. But not at the enemy. At him. Her finger trembled on the trigger. If she fired, everything ended. The ghost gone, the storm silenced, duty restored. If she didn't, she betrayed every soul beside her. The commander's voice cut sharp through the gunfire. "Ward, take the shot." Her chest collapsed inward. Her storm screamed outward. And she didn't. She pulled her rifle away, firing instead at another shadow, another faceless threat. The fight raged, but her silence had spoken louder than bullets. By the time the enemy scattered, retreating into the jagged horizon, the ridge was empty. He was gone again. The commander's fury was immediate. He stormed toward her, eyes blazing. "You hesitated, you had the angle, you let him go." Alina's voice came steady, though her storm tore her apart inside. "I took the shot I had." "Don't lie to me," he barked. The unit watched, the kid's face pale, eyes darting between them. Alina's silence stretched, hard as stone. Finally, the commander spat. "One more hesitation like that, and I'll put you in chains before the enemy does." He turned away, barking orders to regroup. The kid stayed close, whispering when no one else could hear. "It was him, wasn't it?" Alina didn't answer, but her silence was louder than words. The ridge loomed behind them, shadows swallowing its secrets. Her storm no longer raged quietly. It thundered. Because she knew now. The ghost wasn't just alive. He was tangled in the very web they'd been sent to destroy. And sooner or later, she would have to decide. Was she his judge, his enemy? Or his last refuge? How do you carry a secret when it's heavier than the rifle on your back? Alina walked, step by step, through stone and silence, her body following the unit but her mind nowhere near them. The canyon stretched, endless and hollow, but inside her chest a storm raged so loud she wondered how no one else heard it. The ghost of a man she once loved, alive. Fighting with the very enemy they were here to destroy. And she had hesitated. The commander's fury hadn't cooled. His glares burned into her back with every stride. The kid hovered near her still, torn between loyalty to command and faith in her. His silence spoke louder than words. By dusk they reached high ground, overlooking the valley that held the outpost. It wasn't a structure of steel and walls, but of shadows and caves carved into the mountain's side. A stronghold of stone, impossible to storm without bleeding half the unit. The commander laid it out plain. "We hit at dawn, hard, fast, break their spine before they scatter." The men nodded, grim, resigned. The kid looked pale, his eyes flicking toward Alina as though asking her if dawn meant their death. Alina didn't nod, didn't move, because her storm whispered louder than orders. "He'll be there." When night fell, the unit prepared, checking rifles, counting ammo, whispering final prayers into their palms. Some wrote notes in small books, words meant for families they might never see again. In that silence, they all revealed their humanity. One soldier, older, scarred across his temple, murmured to no one in particular, "If I don't make it, tell my daughter, tell her I kept my promise. I stayed brave." The words cracked Alina. She saw the storm in him too, quiet but alive. They all carried storms, some just hid them better. The kid sat close beside her, his whisper barely lifted above the wind. "If tomorrow's it, I don't want to die with lies." She looked at him, his face drawn and tired, the weight of his brother heavy in his eyes. He swallowed. "Tell me yours, whatever it is, I'll carry it too." Her throat tightened, her storm surged. She almost told him, almost, but the words stuck like shrapnel in her chest. Instead she said softly, "Some truths would kill you faster than bullets." His eyes shone wet in the dark, but he nodded, accepting the wound she wouldn't show him. When dawn came, the attack began. The unit moved like shadows, descending toward the caves. The first shots cracked sharp, splitting air and silence alike. Stone erupted under bullets, dust thickening the air. Shouts rose, commands barked, chaos unfurled. Alina's rifle found targets, each shot clean, precise. Bodies fell. Echoes carried, but her storm screamed louder still, searching for him. And then she saw him, not on a ridge, not in shadows, but in the open, leading. He moved like she remembered, controlled, decisive, dangerous. His voice carried over the chaos, commanding his fighters with precision. He wasn't hiding. He wasn't ghost. He was leader. Her chest cracked wide open. The storm became hurricane. He hadn't just survived. He had chosen a side. And it wasn't hers. The commander shouted, pointing him out. "That's the one, take him down." Rifle swung, fingers tightened. Alina froze. Her world collapsed inward, breath clawing her throat. The commander barked again. "Ward, you see him, end it." Her rifle was already raised, her scope locked. And there he was. His eyes found hers through the chaos, as though he had known exactly where she'd be. He didn't raise his weapon at her. He didn't look away. Her finger hovered, trembling on the trigger. One pull and the storm would end. One hesitation and everything else might. The kid's voice cried out behind her, desperate, "Captain, do it." Her storm roared louder than all of them. And then she lowered her rifle. The commander's shout was fury. Bullets tore the air. The fight surged bloodier. But Alina moved, breaking from cover, sprinting forward through fire and stone. Voices screamed after her, hands reached, none caught. She pushed closer to him, her storm no longer chained. He saw her coming, didn't move, didn't aim, just waited, his expression unreadable. At 20 feet she stopped, chest heaving, rifle low. Around them, war raged, but for one suspended moment, silence cut through it all. "Why?" she cried over the noise. Her voice was raw, cracked. "Why did you choose this?" His jaw clenched. His words came hard, sharp. "Because they gave me truth when ours fed me lies. Because I died out there, Alina. And when I woke, no one came. No one but them." Her storm twisted, shattered. The words struck like bullets, each one heavy with betrayal and grief. "You think they saved you," she spat, "but they buried you deeper." His eyes flickered. For 1 second, pain cracked through his hardened stare, but it was gone as quick as it came. "You can't pull me back," he said. Her voice broke, soft and fierce. "I wasn't trying to." He tilted his head, confusion flickering. She raised her rifle, not at him, but upward, firing into the rock above. The ledge collapsed, cutting off enemy reinforcements pouring through the caves. The unit below surged forward, momentum regained. She turned back to him. "I'm not here to save you, I'm here to finish this." For the first time his face shifted, not hard, not cruel, just broken. The fight crashed closer. Shouts, fire, dust, blood. The commander's voice roared orders. The kid's cries split the chaos. And in the blur he stepped back, not defeated, not caught, but retreating, choosing shadow once again. Their eyes locked a final time. Neither spoke. Neither aimed. And then he was gone. The battle ended hours later. The caves burned. The unit bloodied but standing. The commander claimed victory, though suspicion still carved deep into his stare when it landed on her. The kid sat beside her in silence, his hands shaking, his face pale. After a long time he whispered, "He mattered to you." Her chest ached, but she nodded just once. The kid didn't ask more. He didn't need to. He had his own storm to carry. When night fell again, silence wrapped the canyon. The unit slept in shifts, exhaustion pulling them under. Alina sat awake, staring at the horizon where shadows swallowed everything. Her rifle lay across her knees, her hands steady now. Her storm still churned, it always would. But she understood something at last. Storms don't end, they move, they shift, they carve. She couldn't save him. She couldn't kill him. But she could carry the storm and still stand. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. And as dawn broke once more, Alina rose with it, her silence heavier than bullets, her calm the eye of a storm that others leaned on for hope.